More Trump-Putin mystery. At the G20 Summit, both presidents apparently met twice, yet only one meeting is on the record. Tonight, the political scientist who revealed a second secret encounter. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. This is The Day.
But we look forward to a lot of very positive things happening for Russia, for the United States.
Never in my life as a political scientist have I seen two countries, major countries, with a constellation of national interests that are as dissonant.
President Putin and I have been discussing various things, and I think it's going very well. We've had some very, very good talks.
While the two leaders seem to be doing everything possible to make nice and be close to each other.
We're going to have a talk now, and obviously that will continue.
That's what people don't understand.
Also on the show, they're young, attractive, and regal. Britain's most popular royal couple are here in Germany, some say on a charm offensive. Are they the UK's secret Brexit weapon?
Sharing and caring is one of the key qualifications for a member of the royal family. Here in Berlin, they're going to visit a project which provides shelter for street kids. Here they are.
We begin the day at a formal dinner where two presidents apparently stepped away from the table and went off the record. U.S. President Trump and Russian President Putin reportedly met a second time at the G20 Summit in Hamburg, Germany, earlier this month. And until this week, no one knew about it, except both men and Mr. Putin's translator, who was the only other person present. Now, the first meeting between Trump and Putin took place before all eyes of the world. The two-hour meeting included two translators, as well as the Russian foreign minister and the U.S. Secretary of State. The men discussed Syria, North Korea, even allegations of Russian meddling in the U.S. presidential election. But clearly, the two leaders had more to talk about. And that brings us to the formal dinner at the G20 for leaders and their spouses. Now, you may remember the images of First Lady Melania Trump speaking with Mr. Putin at the table. But what we did not see or find out about until much later was the private second talk between Putin and Trump, not at the table and not with any U.S. intelligence officials present, simply the U.S. and Russian presidents and Mr. Putin's translator. Mr. Trump, as the U.S. head of state, was all alone. What the men discussed remains a mystery. Well, the fact that we even know about this second meeting has all to do with the political scientist who is also my guest tonight. I'm happy to welcome Ian Bremmer back to The Day. Ian is president of the global risk consulting firm Eurasia Group. Ian, it's good to see you again. I have to ask you, how did you learn about this second meeting between Trump and Putin?
Well, you know, I've run Eurasia Group for almost 20 years, and over that time I've gotten to know a lot of the principals that were in that room. Some of them are reasonably close friends. So I've been talking to them about the Trump administration since he's become president. And I will tell you that those that were in the room, many of them found it remarkable and concerning that Trump's best relationship among any of the world leaders is with a country that they consider to be an antagonist, not an ally. So I was told by participants directly. And I knew last week. I was quite surprised it didn't come out. I'm not really in the business of breaking news. I wrote my regular update as I do on Saturday morning, still nothing. Then Monday I put it out. Then I went and talked with Charlie Rose. I was already scheduled for it Monday night, and that's when it sort of broke, as it were. Yeah. But quite startling that he would have this 1 hour pull aside privately and not say anything about it.
You say you're not in the business of breaking news stories, but this is a big scoop. Are you confident of what your sources, the people who were there, are you confident of the accuracy of the information that they've given you?
Well, 100%. It's very interesting that, I mean, first of all, I would say almost all of it has already been confirmed by the White House. I mean, the Trump got up in the middle of the dinner. It's 3.5 hours long. He goes around. He pulls Putin aside. Everyone's watching it. They're talking only with the Russian translator. It's very animated. It's extremely friendly. All of those things have been confirmed. The only thing that's not been confirmed by the White House is the fact that it went on for about an hour. I have absolute confidence that that's the case. The White House has not given any sense of how much time. They only said it was brief. And then they called it fake news. I'm personally at a loss to understand which part of that news is fake.
Do you think, Ian, that we would have been told about this second meeting, had you not told us about it? I mean, do you think that Trump and Putin wanted to keep it a secret?
I don't think this was nefarious. I think Trump could care less, didn't think he did anything wrong, had moved on already. But the issue is, I don't think his White House aides knew. I mean, clearly it is a problem if you are having an extended conversation with an antagonist, with the Russian president. They have their interpreter there. So they have a readout of literally word for word what is being said in that meeting. They probably are taping it. Trump does not. That puts the American president and the U.S. in a vulnerable position. And clearly, if the White House aides had known about it, they would have felt uncomfortable. They would have pushed back. My understanding is they only found out after this news broke. So I think there was no intention to make this public.
Well, what you're saying there is that if Trump was the only person from the U.S. side in this meeting, then the Russians, basically, they own the content, right? And they can report whatever they want to. And that's how they create so-called kompromat, which, compromising information. So have they played the U.S. president?
That's my concern. I mean, I think back on when Trump was in Saudi Arabia, and he was treated exceptionally well by his hosts, the Saudis and their allies, the Emiratis, the Egyptians. And they all said, we're going to hit Iran really hard, and we're going to hit terror really hard. And Qatar is a big problem. And Trump goes along with that. Before you know it, there's a blockade. The Trump is tweeting and pushing Qatar pretty hard. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Tillerson, Secretary of Defense Mattis is pushing back and say, wait, these guys are important. We need to walk this back. It's too late. My concern is that Trump in a meeting by himself with Putin could very easily be played by a Russian president who knows a lot more about what he wants from him and how to extract it. And that's not a position we should want the American president to be in.
And Ian, why is this an important story outside of the United States and outside of Russia? Why should the world care?
Well, I think one big reason is because, I mean, all of these heads of state, ministers of foreign affairs that I talk to, I mean, since Trump's been elected, the top topic of conversation has been, we had a meeting with Trump, we had a conversation with Trump on the phone, here's what he said. What do we do with that? How do we make it? In other words, there's been a lot of, in the United States, Trump has a very solid base that supports him. Outside the United States, whatever lip service leaders give, there's enormous amounts of mistrust of Trump as president and the America First doctrine. And I think the fact that these leaders in the first G20 then see in front of their faces that their relationship with their ally, their most important ally for many of them, the United States, seems to pale in terms of the personal relationship that Trump has with Putin, the one leader that he's never criticized, despite many opportunities and many interests to do so. Before he was president, as president, it's been consistent. Putin never takes a hit from Trump. He's very quick to hit the Germans on not paying enough for NATO, on unfair trade practices, the Chinese, the Japanese, the list goes on, but never Putin. And I think when you put that context together, as well as the fact that Trump and the Trump administration has been caught in a lot of, let's say, exaggerations and not being forthcoming with information about Russia, it really makes all of these other leaders say there's something here we don't understand. And that when Trump and the Trump administration, my president, comes out and says this is fake news, I hate to say this, but there's no credibility. The foreign policy establishment in the U.S. and international internationally, does not actually believe the American president.
Well, and it begs this question, do you think we'll ever learn what the two presidents discussed in this secret discussion? I mean, how will we ever learn about it?
Well, I mean, if we do, we're going to learn about it from the Russians, which means we'll learn about it because it's in their interests for us to learn about it. And that is, frankly, not a position that we want to be in. The White House just had a readout where they talked again about the meeting, mostly looked like what they had put out in their statement, their 6-paragraph statement yesterday. And when asked about the content of the meeting, they refused to get into it. That obviously is not satisfactory to many of those that are observing the Trump administration in the U.S. and around the world.
Ian Bremmer, it's always a pleasure talking with you. Fascinating to hear your insights as well. We appreciate you taking the time to be on The Day. Come back.